You are sitting in a house that might be worth $400,000, maybe $500,000, maybe $600,000, and the single component standing between that house and a fire that takes it to the ground costs the builder less than a cup of coffee. Sits in a metal box in your basement or garage, behind a door you've opened maybe twice. In roughly 25 million American homes, that component was designed to look like protection while doing nothing the one time your life depends on it. Today, I will show you what it is, how it was caught 4 decades ago, and why it is still legally sitting in those walls with no recall. Walk down to your electrical panel and open it. You are looking at 2 rows of little switches, and almost nobody knows what they do. A circuit breaker has one job. When too much current runs through a wire, like a short, an overload, or a frayed cable heating up inside a wall, it is supposed to snap off and kill the power before that wire gets hot enough to ignite the wood around it. It is the emergency brake for your entire house. You will go years without needing it. Then one night, a circuit faults, and that little switch is the only thing between a tripped breaker and a structure fire. When I bought my first place, the inspector spent 30 seconds at the panel, pointed at a thin red stripe across the breakers, and said 4 words: "We need to talk." That red stripe is a brand name, and that's where this gets ugly. That brand is Federal Pacific Electric, and the breakers are called Stab-Lok. From the 1950s through the 1980s, they were everywhere because they were the cheapest panel a builder could install that still passed inspection and carried the all-important UL safety label. Cheapest part that closes the sale. Here's where it stops being abstract. In the early 1980s, the Consumer Product Safety Commission hired engineers to test FPE, Stab-Lok breakers, pulled from real homes built between 1960 and 1985. The test was simple. When you push too much current through this breaker, does it trip, the way every breaker on Earth is required to? 51% did not. Not a rounding error. Not a bad batch. A coin flip's chance that the one safety device in your wall does nothing when a wire overheats. Failure to trip is the clinical term, and it means exactly what it sounds like. The switch stays on while the fire starts, but 51% was the charitable number. The Consumer Product Safety Commission ran out of money, but one engineer did not stop. Dr. Jesse Ehrenstein has been pulling and testing these breakers since 1982, over 3,000 of them, and his results make the government's 51% look generous. In real-world conditions, failure to trip rates climb to 60, 70, even 80% on certain breakers. On 2-pole, 240-volt breakers, the ones feeding your stove, dryer, and air conditioner, failures ran as high as 70%, and once one jams, a second overload can fail to trip essentially 100% of the time. Now here's the sentence that should change how you think about your own panel. People tell me it has been fine for 40 years. That is not evidence it works. A breaker is dormant by design. It does nothing until a real fault asks it to act. 40 quiet years does not mean it is safe. It means it has never been tested by the emergency it exists for. And there's no clever fix. You can't swap in a new breaker and call it solved because the defect lives in the panel and its bus, not one switch. The only real answer is replacing the entire panel, $1,500 to $4,000, more once today's code forces in arc, fault, and ground fault breakers at $50 to $80 each instead of $7, which raises the question this story has been circling. If it was this bad, this well documented, this early, why was it never recalled? Here's the part I had to read 3 times. In 2002, a New Jersey court ruled that Federal Pacific had, for years, knowingly sold breakers that were never actually tested to meet the underwriter's laboratory's safety standard printed on the label, an unlawful practice under the state's Consumer Fraud Act. Investigators alleged the company used remote switches to manually trip breakers during Underwriters Laboratories' surveillance tests, hiding the fact that the actual mechanisms were jamming. The product passed its safety audits because someone was flipping them by hand. Federal Pacific's parent company had acknowledged a possible defect in a 1982 Securities and Exchange Commission filing, and Underwriters Laboratories pulled the Stab-Lok listing around 1980. The defect was proven, the fraud was ruled on, and the listing was revoked. Then the Consumer Product Safety Commission closed its investigation in 1983, citing its limited budget, and never issued a recall. That's the answer to the question I opened with. 25 million homes kept their defective panels, not because no one knew, but because the body that knew decided it could not afford to act. A peer-reviewed 2012 IEEE paper estimates these panels cause roughly 2,800 house fires, 13 deaths, and over $40 million in property damage every year. A part that cost under $10 in a house worth hundreds of thousands of dollars was never recalled. So who is responsible? The first villain is a manufacturer that, when its product failed the safety test, chose to fake the test rather than fix the product. That is not corner cutting. That is a decision. But the second villain should genuinely bother you. The agency created to protect you found the hazard, documented the failure rates, watched the listing get revoked, and then it walked away because the investigation was too expensive to finish. And here's the modern twist. Your insurance company already knows all of this. They increasingly send a 30-day letter demanding you replace the panel or lose coverage. And if a fire is ever traced to a known FPE hazard, they can deny the claim entirely, leaving you personally liable for the house. The people pricing this risk refuse to carry it. That should tell you everything. So what should you do? Number 3, and you can do this in 5 minutes. Open your panel and look. If you see the words Federal Pacific, FPE, or Stab-Lok, or breakers with a thin red stripe or red-tipped handles, you have one. Number 2, get a licensed electrician out for an assessment. Do not let anyone tell you they will just replace the bad breakers as a fix. The flaw is in the panel itself, and swapping breakers is lipstick on a fire hazard. Number 1, the counterintuitive one. Replace the whole panel before anything forces you to. It sounds like spending $2,000 to $4,000 on a problem that has not bitten you yet. But the alternative is not to do nothing. It is doing the work under an insurer's 30-day ultimatum, or in the middle of a sale when a buyer's inspector flags it against a closing date. As of February 2025, Fannie Mae's guidelines classify these panels as requiring immediate replacement. The forced version of this job always costs more than the planned one. Here is the line to keep. A breaker that cannot trip is not protection. It is a decoration that closed the sale. The builder's incentive was to install the cheapest part that passed inspection. Your incentive is to survive the one night that part is asked to do its job. Those incentives have never aligned. Before you close this, check one more thing. If your home was built between 1965 and 1973, there is a kind of wiring in your walls that has been linked to fires 55 times more often than copper. It is aluminum branch wiring. Next time, we will explain exactly how to find it. Subscribe so you do not miss it.